John, you talk a lot about radical generosity and gifting, but what got you into gifting? Why is it important to you?
Yeah, well, it didn't start the way that most people would assume. Like, I didn't grow up in the cool neighborhood in like Beverly Hills or New York. I grew up on a farm in the middle of Nowheresville, Ohio, 47 acres, one of 6 kids, milking goats every morning. And so I hated blue collar work. I hated baling hay. I hated like heating our house with wood. And so I wanted to make money and not be poor anymore. So I was going to go be a doctor and make mom proud. And so I ended up starting a side business, fell off the ladder a couple of times, almost died, and was like, this whole blue collar thing's not working. Like, you need to find something else, John. And so I ended up, finding a company to intern with. And I started mimicking my girlfriend's dad at the time. He was an attorney, and he was like a rainmaker, a deal maker. Like, everything came his way. Like, and he was a great attorney, but really he owned like everything. And he was radically generous. And so I remember, kind of mimicking things and seeing things that he was doing. And one of them, like, he'd find deals on noodles, and then he'd buy like a semi-load of noodles, and everybody at church the next Sunday would end up like 200 cases or 20 cases of noodles. I'm like, Paul, it was 20, 30 grand. Are you insane? And he's like, I know, but did you see their smiles? And I'm like, Paul, like, that was nuts. And so I saw the benefit, like I saw the amount of referrals and deals that came in to Paul. And so I started to mimic those principles. And the company I was working for, I ended up becoming the #1 sales rep for them out of about 1.5 million other people, because of using these radical generosity principles and using kind of gifting and gratitude as this competitive advantage.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you.
It's Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, so you know what that means. It's time for another episode of #Event Icons, presented by Endless Events. The show where you get to ask the icons of the events industry anything. Just go to www.event-icons.com to ask questions. Our iconic guests will answer them live during the entire show. Before we get started, the more people we have watching, the better the conversation. So please help share #Event Icons on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Just tell your friends to watch at www.event-icons.com. Now, without any further delay, this is #Event Icons.
Like, our $130 trinket that we think is amazing is actually like a drop in the bucket compared to the value of this relationship or this partnership or this speaker or this, Man of the Year award or Woman of the Year award or whatever it is. So yeah, I mean, oftentimes we don't care what they're giving. Like, we call it a loyalty action plan. And whether it's to one person or whether it's to 10,000 people, it's like, who are the people? What's the value of the relationship? What's the ROI? Like, what's the impact that we're going for? Why are we even giving it? Do we really need to give it? What's going to be the handwritten note that's going to go with it to actually bring meaning to the item? So it's taking them through a whole consulting and thought process to say, can we afford to really invest in this relationship the way that we want to and have the impact? And who else is important to that person? Are they married? Do they have kids? Do they have pets? Who else has made them successful? Maybe their assistant. Like, there's a lot, like that inner circle is something that we talk a lot about. And so a lot of the gifting that we do is to look at things in a 360-degree way versus what can we all agree on? Can we get this done with and move on to the important stuff? And realize, like, every little detail, oftentimes it's the little things that somebody's going to remember about an event. Like, I remember one of the guys that was speaking at a big event, he waived his $25,000 fee and because he loved the nonprofit and the organization, and they sent him a really nice handwritten note and a $25 Amazon gift card.
Oh, no.
And they're like, and the guy was like, he didn't say anything to them, but he came to me and he's like, John, like, they actually insulted me and pissed me off. Like, they think that a $25 Amazon gift card for my $25,000 donation of a fee away from my family and my kids and whatever else, he's like, the handwritten note would have been enough. What they don't realize is they actually offended me by sending this Thoughtless trinket, this gift card. And so oftentimes people don't realize, like, the psychology of what they're giving does communicate a message, whether they realize it or not. And understanding that is really, really powerful. And whether it's to 12 board of directors or whether it's to one person or whether it's to the entire organization, they need to put thought into it, because being thoughtless there can be that one little thing that is like that sand in the bottom of your shoe. It's just like, is it important relative to the whole event? Not really, but it's that one thing that they might focus on and be like, yeah, like they're just not classy. They weren't thoughtful. And so we really challenge people to, whether they're going to hire us or whether they're going to read the book, like, just, put some intentionality and some thought behind it, because it could be that one thing that makes the difference of whether they recommend the organization or, like everybody has conversations behind the scenes about events and conferences and associations, and especially amongst speakers and leaders, like it's really a small world out there. And we want people speaking well of our organizations and of our companies, not like, yeah, they're great, and that but is can be a huge thing over something, what seems like it's very trivial.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting to, like, you have a lot of strong opinions out there in the marketplace, which I really kind of liked about you, because it was more, the language was so direct. It's a horrible playbook when it comes to gifting and relationship. And the phrase that you kept coming back to was like, it's promotional marketing. And I thought that was really interesting, because from a corporate standpoint, corporate events, they still even seem to struggle with it because they're going out to these big trade shows, right? And how do you reconcile that when you're sitting in a trade show booth and you're going to have 10,000 doctors coming by and see you? You've segmented it down and you have great gifts for 100 that you've chosen, but like that rest of those people that aren't the chosen 100, how do you help still create that great experience that's scalable in a way that's not going to bankrupt you if you're not Johnson & Johnson?
Yeah, well, I think that a lot of the companies that we work with are mid-market. They're $5 million to $1 billion companies that are going up against the $20 billion publicly traded companies or whatever else that have maybe, they would never say they have unlimited budgets, but if they really want to do something, I mean, some of them are dropping $5-10 million on one event.
Right.
And if they want to do something, it's like, you want Justin Timberlake? Yeah, we'll pay $2 million for Justin Timberlake. I mean, so they're doing certain things at a Ritz-Carlton level, but then they want to play the poor card and do things at a Super 8 motel level when it comes to gifting, which I think is just hilarious. And so to me, it's one of those things where if I had 10,000 doctors that are coming through, like you, I would do the top 100. I'd send a pre-gift to get them to come to the booth and wow them and blow them away. And then I'd take the other, 9,000 and I'd filter through and I'd pick another 500 people afterwards that you want to continue the experience with. The stuff that you hand out to people at the event, whether it's, whether you spend $5,000 on 10,000 people or whatever else, like it's meaningless. It's like going to end up in the trash can or at the bottom of a bag, or, like it's not making that lasting, wow, like we're world-class impression. And so to me, I would rather take all of that budget and the follow-up budget, because everybody talks a good game when they're at the event or the trade show, and then they get back to reality. And a lot of those leads or people go dark because they're busy and you're sending emails and you're sending fancy brochures that you spent $25 a piece on and all this stuff. And it's just noise. And so to me, I would rather, instead of handing some trinket out, I would not hand anything out. I'd hand the 100 to the key people. I would filter through and segment the other 9,500 or whatever, filter out the top 250, 500. And then I'd send them, I'd have my sales team all send a handwritten note to those people with a thoughtful gift that's personalized to them. And it's really the concept of, I'd rather shoot with a rifle versus a shotgun approach. Most people are like, I'm going to go after everybody, but really they're going after nobody because it's just noise, it's vanilla. And you wow those 500 people that you really want as clients. It's the Pareto principle, 80-20. Like go after the 20% that you really want as clients, that you really care, and go all in on those people. And maybe it's not even one gift, it's a follow-up series. Like for some of our clients, we're sending 3-4 gifts over the course of 3 or 4 months to keep that, it's the exclamation point after the event, and going all in on a few versus going mediocre on the many. And in doing so, your close rate goes up through the roof, and you're not just creating a bunch of busy work for your team.
Plus your cost of acquisition. It just made my marketer's heart go like pitter patter, because you could just watch it like going down, because now you've really spread it across. Oh yeah, that's beautiful. Sorry, I had to take a moment there. So like, tell us a little bit about, gifting and customer loyalty. So you've built this relationship. Let's say you convert them to a client and you've had them for a couple of years now. How do you keep that relationship fresh, right? Because you've already wowed them. Is that something where the gifts have to escalate in relationship value as the relationship grows? How do you quantify that?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people, it's way sexier to go after new business and go after the whales and new blood. And so, like my buddy Joey Coleman talks about, like most people have a hole in their bucket and they don't realize, and they take people for granted. And they're like, well, we already have them as a client. We don't have to do anything. That's like death. Because guess what? If they're a great client for you, they're a great client for your competitors, and those people are being called on. And so all it needs to be is one slip up or whatever else. And then people are crying in their beer because they're like, oh, I would have spent the money if I knew they were going to leave. And it's like, if you would view it as customer insurance to say, I'm going to do things for my relationships when I don't have to, I'm going to do it because I want to. And oftentimes our current clients, referral partners, strategic vendors, all of those people are kind of taken for granted until they leave. And our rule of thumb is you should be reinvesting 5 to 15% of net profit to keep them as a client, to hopefully inspire them to grow with you. And the secret sauce is, if you love on your current relationships really well, people are like, John, how many sales reps do you have? And I'm like, I have about 3,000. And they're like, how do you afford 3,000 sales reps? And I'm like, because I take, the CEO of the Orlando Magic, who's a client, and all these other people, and I reinvest 5 to 15% of net profit back into them. And guess what? If you do that over time, like the Cleveland Indians referred me 38 other teams in one day.
Wow.
One-on-one referrals, not a mass email, like a one-on-one introduction to the Yankees and and I'm like, if you do things well to your clients when you don't have to, and you're consistently loving on them and reinvesting a percentage of profits, like you get to keep the other 85% of the profits. You're not talking reinvesting 90%. We're talking 5 to 15%. People notice. They're like, you did this not because out of obligation. You sent me this gift and you loved on me and did this thing for my family because you wanted to. You already has me as a client. I already love you. And when you pour that gasoline on the fire, that when somebody already loves you, now they're looking for ways to want to reciprocate and go out of their way to open doors for you, because they're like, you're different. Everybody says they're different and whatever else, but actually modeling it and putting your money where your mouth is way different than saying you matter. Like, show me, don't tell me. And so for us, the warm market is where I invest 80% of our resources. People are like, how much prospecting do you do? And I'm like, very little. I used to do a lot. But once I have good relationships, just pour gasoline on the fire and love on them and inspire them to become salespeople for me. That's how I can afford to have somebody that's a $3 million CEO as a sales rep for me. Like, I just had dinner in Chicago with somebody who has a huge company, and they're going out of their way to open up doors with their other YPO chapter members, all these other presidents of organizations. I could never afford a sales rep as good as him. And I get him, as a sales rep just because I love on him, because I don't have to. I do it because I want to.
Right.
And that's the power.
And so, like, from an attendee standpoint, in essence, you're telling us, so it's like the big giveaways you do to get them to come to the booth. Like, you're coming in, don't just give away the little swag. You're coming in and you say, we're going to give away the premium product that we have as the chance to do it. Do you like those when people say you have the ability to draw this, or is that feeling like a token icky as well?
I think it depends on the industry. I'm sure there's some industries where they're motivated by the big giveaway, but I think most people, if they've been in the industry long enough, they know that oftentimes those giveaways are rigged to go a certain way to a certain prospect or customer or whatever else. And I think that most people, they're giving away an iPad. Guess what? The doctors that you're talking to or whatever else, are they motivated? No, they already have 7 iPads at their house. And so you oftentimes attract the people that you don't even want to engage with you to show up for the free whatever. Meanwhile, the people who you actually want to engage with, that are influencers, that are like executives of companies, they're not motivated by the free dinner or the free iPad giveaway. But they all love to be treated VIP and treated special. And so I think the giveaways in most cases, in a lot of industries, especially when you're dealing with white collar, more affluent people, you're not motivating the people you actually want to engage with. You're attracting the wrong people, and you're wondering why it's like you're not closing those bigger deals or whales. It's because you're drawing the wrong bees. You're not, you're basically targeting the wrong customer with that kind of offer.
Yeah. So let's go back and talk a little bit about the different types of offers and different types of gifts. One of the interviews you gave said that there was a difference between an inspiration gift and a referral gift. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, I hate referral gifts because everybody in the business world, like, it's like so common, like, oh, I'm in the relationship business. I'm not in the commodity business. We're all about relationship. Like, that's great. You're not competing on price. But when you give a gift after a referral, what did you just turn that relationship into? You turned it into a transaction. You do this for me, I give you this. It's a tit for tat. It doesn't work because most of your affluent clients are not motivated by the $250 Starbucks gift card or the whatever. They're referring you the business based upon the trust and they're going to look good by connecting you. And then I've had many people come up to me like, John, I feel icky when this person's sending me the gift card or the whatever. Like, that's not why I referred them. What's interesting is the inspiration gift. So the referral gift is more the carrot and stick method. And to me, the higher up the food chain you go, the less that works. It might work with the masses of guys making $12 an hour where you do this and get this. But if you're dealing with more affluent customers, then they want to be they all love to be treated like VIP and special. So you send the gift on the front end. People are like, well, like, I don't want to, what if I don't get a referral? And I'm like, if you love on your top 20% of your clients and your relationships and referral partners and love on them consistently and reinvest money back into them, guess what? They will refer more than if you did the carrot and stick, the old school method. So inspire people by loving on them just because, out of the blue, not out of obligation, not at a holiday, not at a referral, not at an anniversary. Do it just because, and do that consistently and surprise and delight them. And they will want to, in their DNA, they'll be looking out for ways to open doors for you and refer business. And oftentimes 10 times more referrals than if you did the old school carrot and stick method that in my opinion, doesn't work.
Yeah. So what are some of the best gifts you've ever seen? Were they ones you came up with, or did you see? That's a loaded question, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that we're pretty good at what we do, sourcing gifts. And oftentimes the what, like I said before, like there's, who are you giving it to, including their spouse, including their family name, including their name. So oftentimes the gift itself is important, but it's like 50% of the impact. It's the surprise and delight. It's the timing. It's the handwritten note. Oftentimes people are like, well, in this industry, we can't do gifts. You know, it's Costco. They can't even buy them a cup of coffee. And I'm like, great. You know, our letterhead that we write handwritten notes on is $9. It's a sheet of steel. Take an hour and write the nicest note on the planet to that person and go take it to them and read it. They'll cry and you'll probably cry and you'll deepen the relationship more than sending them a $200 whatever. So in my opinion, you know, some of the best gifts I've seen, the handwritten note's super powerful. In fact, when people outsource all their gifting to us, I won't let them do it unless they're willing to put a handwritten note with it. It's that important. I used to make fun of mugs as being like one of the worst gifts on the planet in the corporate America, especially. And people would put their logo on it, but they thought they were being cute because they put M&Ms inside. And I'm like, that's the lamest thing on the planet. Like nobody cares about your M&M filled, mug. But this artist that surprised me made this $600 mug for me and one for my wife, and carved into it was my whole life story, my why. And he drove 9.5 hours to hand deliver it to me. My wife will tell you is one of the most thoughtful gifts, the best gifts that we've ever received. And I've been given Rolexes and some pretty crazy gifts. I've been really blessed. That $600 mug to me is more powerful as a gift than a $60,000 watch because of what it represents, the personalization, the tie into somebody's legacy. You want to talk about like blowing somebody away. Like we've had people make them for billionaires and seen billionaires cry from these artifact mugs. So it's not always about spending the most amount of money or are you having to source it through Giftology, but going and taking the time to do the research and willing to make the effort and willing to handwrite notes or have somebody help you with the handwritten notes. All of those little things are why people are like, crap, John, this is a lot of work. Like, how do I do this for 1,000 people? And I'm like, well, that's a great question. You can outsource it to Giftology, or you can empower your team and give them the time to do the research and all of those sorts of things. Because what we talk about isn't rocket science. It's not like it's not duplicatable. Like there's other people that could do the custom engraved knives and the things that, tie into somebody, breaking bread with each other. But unless you're willing to do all the details of getting the spouse's name and do all the hard work, then whether you outsource it or not, like it's not going to work. It's just going to be more stuff showing up that gets regifted. And to me, that's one of the biggest insults. People are like, oh, we don't want to put anything on it so they can give it away. And I'm like, really? Like, you think that's a good thing that they're going to regift your gift? Like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Like, that's insane. So to me, like, whether you outsource it or not, it's really are you going to get the leadership involved to say that how we treat our most important relationships, whether it's employees and clients or partners, that if it matters, then let's be strategic about it. Let's put a plan together and let's put the real resources behind it to make it work, or let's redirect those resources elsewhere. Let's not play in the middle and in between. And that's our biggest thing when we're talking to clients is to be really thoughtful about it. And if you can't afford to do it right, then don't do it at all.
Yeah. Yeah. So when could you go too far? Because I feel like, going back to that ethical consideration question, there's probably, there's a line, right?
Oh, yeah.
Show up and you're like, I've bought you clothes perfectly tailored, but we've never met before.
Yeah, so I've done that before. And so I would say that anytime you're willing to do something, it like that's risk adverse, like that like gifting, it could backfire. Like there's risk involved. Like somebody you could find out you're sending a gift to, and they're getting investigated for fraud, or like any number of things could happen. And so that's always possible. So people like freak out. Like we had people, like we sent off gifts to 100 people and 2 of them returned the gift. And they focus on the 2 versus the 98 that are now clients for life. So I always tell people, like, if you're not willing to have like push the envelope a little bit, then you're going to be mediocre. You're going to be vanilla. But in general, I remind people, like, nobody's going to prison. We're not killing puppies here. Like if you send a gift to somebody and they send it back and it's one of 20 or one of 100, like it's going to be okay. But what most people do is they play in the middle. And if it's a company like I said, Walmart or Costco that you can't even buy a cup of coffee for, like I think that's ludicrous, but that's the rules. But most people, if you can take them out to a round of golf or ball game tickets or take them out to a nice dinner with wine, then the gifts that we're talking about are usually in the $100 to $1,000 per gift range. So it's not Louis Vuitton bags for 25 grand, but it's also not polo shirts for like, $27. By the way, I all of a sudden out of nowhere, something popped up on my screen and says my computer is going to restart in about 5 seconds. So if it does,
then I'm going to sit here and patter, and we'll come back. And for everybody watching at home, it'll be like a magic show where John disappears and then he comes back in with an even better gift for Lindsay. Yeah,
exactly. That's exactly right. I've never seen that pop up quite like that. And maybe we're going to be okay. But if not, then you'll know why. I wasn't offended by your question. So it seems like we're okay now. All right. Maybe that was just maybe my tech company was messing with me.
Joke, right? You need to basically time your snaps so that you fade away. Yeah. Like pull that in from our editing. So, okay. Yeah. So as we're talking about that, just because you actually gave somebody tailored clothes. Now I'm sorry, I have to come back to it because I'm like, really?
Yeah.
And had you met it before?
No, well, I'd met them, but they weren't a client. They weren't, it was somebody that that was like one of the top speakers in the world, Cameron Harold. He wrote Double Double. He like consults like the Sheikh of Qatar and his 300 companies over in the Middle East. And I met him and I realized like he could be a mentor, an advisor, a consultant for me, but I couldn't afford his like 15 grand a month fee. So I wanted to impress him. And I invited him to dinner and a ball game thinking that was going to be like the coolest thing ever. And his response was the most underwhelming response ever. He's like, who cares? I'm going to go on 100 dinners and 100 ball games kind of a response. And I'm like, holy crap. Like, almost everybody in business, they go to dinner, ball game, like that's normal. That doesn't wow anybody. And so I'm like, I need to do something else. I found out he loved Brooks Brothers. He was coming into town from Canada where there wasn't a lot of Brooks Brothers, and he was going to go shopping, and his flight got delayed. So I found out what his shirt size and his clothing size was. And I went to Brooks Brothers and I said, I want one of everything in your new fall collection, all your jackets, pants, suits, belts, everything, and bought $7,000 worth of clothes.
Oh my God.
And outfitted his hotel room to look like a Brooks Brothers store. And when he got in, you could tell like he didn't want to talk to me or go to dinner with me or he just wanted to go to bed. And I said, Cameron, go take a shower, come down whenever you're ready. We'll go just, even if we miss the game, who cares? And he came down and his eyes were popping out of his head and he was glowing. He said, John, I thought I had like all these other like when I flew to Dubai and, the Four Seasons remember my name and all this other stuff. He's like, I've never had anybody treat me this way. Whatever you want to talk about for as long as you want to talk about it, I'm all ears. And so the reason we can charge 25 to 50 grand for a keynote is before there was a book, before there was John Ruhlin, speaking on stages, when he was double booked, he would recommend me and be like, CEO or event planner, you need to book John Ruhlin. And they'd be like, oh, we never heard of him. And you're like, just trust me. And he would use his social capital and he did things for me that $1 million in advertising could never do, all because of that act of generosity. And then I continued for the next 5 years to send him gifts like once a quarter. But it was the personalization, because even when I spoke at Google, they're like, John, we're going to go broke if we spend $7 grand on every client. And I'm like, you're missing the point. The point isn't to spend $7,000 on every relationship. The point is to personalize the experience and to go all in, whatever that means for you and for that relationship. Because Cameron came back to me and says, John, the act of shopping for me and the way you made me feel was the gift. I can't let you buy the clothes on top of that. So you're either going to tell me how much the clothes were that I picked out and I'll write you a check for that, or I'm going to guess and I'm going to round up by 50% and I'm going to write you a check for that. So that entire experience cost me $0 actually and has reaped me 7 figures. all because of going all in and saying, what's the most I can do to show this guy that everybody says, that they have something worthy to share with somebody, and everybody says that they're different, but very few people are willing to communicate that in the little interactions of what they do for a client. And oftentimes it's those little things that make the massive difference that they brag about. Like Cameron has shared that story in so many articles and forums and on stages. And I mean, it's become like, and he's, he's a great client and whatever else, but that was the lightning rod that showed him that this crazy John Ruhlin guy is actually for real.
Yeah, I like it though, because, a lot of the times, especially as an event planner, like you talk about being blessed, but like there's a sense of entitlement, right? Like we go on fam tours all the time. There's this new hotel that's just opened in Hong Kong, and we're going there this summer as part of a fam tour. And I'm excited because all of the press around this particular property is phenomenal, but I'm already like, I wonder what they're going to do and how they're going to, and so it's like, there's this level of almost like you're having to up the ante for it. But even then, going back to some of the most memorable experiences, one of them was from the city of Memphis, just because I wasn't even considering it as a destination. And the guy on their CVB staff brought it in because he knew I loved the jazz club that was down there off Beale Street. And they set up this whole thing complete with a tour of the Peabody because I like the Ducks. And it's like those little bitty pieces like that probably didn't cost him a lot of extra money in the grand scheme of things. So that personalization piece just so authentic, because you really do go, oh, but that's why. And I recommend the heck out of them all the time. So yeah. I mean, people forget that we're all human beings and we all have insecurities. We all have dreams. We all have, oftentimes families or people around us that we care about. And oftentimes the higher up the food chain we go, the lonelier it gets and the less we're treated like a human being. We're treated like a check, writing machine or a whatever. And when you're like, when somebody takes a step back and says, man, I see you and I understand who you are, what makes you tick. And when you can give the gift, we're all in business to make a profit, but when you can give a gift and not hold it over that person's head, so you do it with the right heart set and the right mindset, saying, hey, I hope we're able to do business together, but if we don't, I still appreciate you as a human being. And knowing that if you do that for 100 people, enough of people will say yes, that the other percentage that say no, oftentimes it isn't even no. It's like, maybe it's not the right time, or who knows what's going on in their life or whatever else. And so everybody, it's like Gary Vee's, it's sexy talking about the long game, but most people don't play the long game of relationship building that way. And they don't realize what's it worth to get somebody out there like you being an advocate for Memphis. Like it's worth a lot of money, but most people don't think about that. You're welcome, Patrick, as we are sitting here, dumping for you. But well, that actually brings up a good point. So thinking about it as a professional speaker, what's the one thing you wish that the event organizer would ask you, because it's always one of the things that we're going to do is send you a gift after you come, even though we pay your speaking fee. Like, what are the things that we should be asking you to get to know you better outside of all right, so you've got 30 minutes on stage, what are you going to talk about?
Yeah. Well, I think that it's all the things that are not involved with the event. I mean, it's great to be put into a suite or to be treated well, but oftentimes it sounds like a lot of money to be paid X number of dollars to the speaking fee, but the travel, it's wear and tear on your family. It's time away from your business, multiple days. It's, as an introvert, I remember one of my buddies, Cameron, was like, he's an introvert too. And he hates going to dinners ahead of the speaking event, but he does it because he wants to add value, but he actually doesn't like it. And so you assume they're a speaker, they're going to love this, this, and this, but really finding out do they really have to be at the dinner, or, hey, how can I make it more comfortable for that person? I think that the biggest things are realizing that they have a family at home, they have kids at home, they, what's going on at their house right now. Oftentimes when I'm traveling, it's the worst possible time. My kid's sick, or, something just happened in the business. And so I think realizing that, even though they're a speaker and they're bringing them in for business, there's a lot of other things that are going on in that person's life. And I think acknowledging that and sending, and saying hey, would you love to bring your family or not bring your family? Would you love to bring your kids or not bring your kids? Would you, finding out the kids' names and sending something home to honor them and make them the hero to their kids when they're away or whatever else. So I think that, there's a number of those kind of questions, and maybe it's asking them, but oftentimes if you really want to blow them away, it's talking to their team and saying, hey, we want to be known as the best event XYZ person's ever spoke at. what makes them tick? What makes their wife or husband tick? What makes their kids tick? Do they have the pet? What's their, what are their favorite foods? Are they on a diet? Like, I can't tell you how many people that are traveling that are on like some sort of special eating regimen or are trying to avoid alcohol or like all of those little details to set up a person's room and then have something show up at their family's place to make them look like the hero while they're away. You want to talk about like speakers talk about events and you want to get a concession or get somebody to do something that they normally wouldn't do, like building that goodwill with that person, not just paying their fee and not hardcore negotiating with them over that, but it's all the little things that make them say, wow, like they get that this isn't just gravy and easy, that I'm a human being and I have a family and I have other things going on. And how can I make, it's like anything, like my employees, like one of the things I do for all my employees, they all work remotely. A lot of them are college educated, stay-at-home moms. I pay to have their houses cleaned every other week. And it costs us $2,000 per employee. And the reason we offered it is I remember like my wife, like, it's a big deal to be able to like not have to worry about that sort of thing. And like for when I started to pay my, employees, I didn't give them the cash because they would spend it on bills or, other things. But it's really putting yourself in the other person's shoes and saying, what would they really want that they wouldn't even know to ask for or wouldn't even do for themselves?
Yeah.
And you can start to tie into those sorts of things, whether it's for your employees or speakers or clients, like radical things start to happen because they're like, holy crap, like I wouldn't even done this for myself and you thought to do this. Like they'll never forget you as long as they live.
Yeah, no, I mean, that makes me, are you high? No, I'm kidding. No, that's really, I mean, I really like that. So talk to me a little bit, because how does one present that? You were, from a cultural consideration, talking about even the way that you present it in Japan. So how do you build up that presentation of the gift that you're giving? I'm assuming it's part of the pre-work going in, but is it very different, or is there kind of a methodology to that that's scalable?
Yeah, well, I think that the reason we don't do gifts at an event typically, unless they're really over the top, is if 10,000 or 1,000 or 100 people all seeing the same person everybody getting that same gift, it lessens the impact. Whereas you could send the same gift to everybody ahead of time, and it shows up with a handwritten note. They're like, wow, this was thoughtful. The spouse sees it. They have to travel with it. And they're wondering, am I the only person that got this? Like there's a different emotional connection. So presentation does matter. To me, oftentimes the event itself and the entertainment, the food, the speakers, all that kind of stuff should stand on its own. And I like doing a pre-experience or a post-experience when it comes to gifts. If you're talking about the internal customer, which would be your employees, I do think that like how you present the gift, like house cleaning matters. Like you're not saying like, hey, you suck at cleaning your house. Like here, like it's, hey, we understand, like we want you to have more time with your kids, your family. We understand that like you work really hard and the last thing you want to do is be scrubbing toilets on a Saturday morning. Like we'd rather you go like for a walk with your husband or your wife and so I think that the context that you bring to the gift is saying, hey, we value you. We want to do something for you that maybe you wouldn't do for yourself. And you don't have to take it. You can reject the gift, but it's either accept that, like what we think you might want versus, I think that's the other thing in corporate America is like people, they want to give options. And so they end up ruining the gift by saying, hey, go pick out your own gift. And we all are internally, like we're all like kids on Christmas. Like it's so cool when we can come down and see the gift that we wanted under the Christmas tree that was picked out for us because it was known that that's what we wanted. And so I think giving somebody a catalog and saying, hey, go pick out your own gift ruins the gift. And you can do that with, you can do that with American Express points or whatever else. But if you really want the gift to signify something to the relationship, it's putting yourself in the other person's shoes and saying, hey, the reason we can do the knives for everybody is everybody eats, and is it going to land 1,000% of the time? No, like there's gonna be some people that don't like it, but it's putting yourself out there and saying, hey, I'm going to try to do the hard, heavy lifting of thinking about the person and personalizing and doing all the little details and then presenting it well. But oftentimes if you're trying to scale it, what I love about tangible gifts is I can hit 1,000 key relationships in 1,000 cities without ever jumping on an airplane or a flight. And that to me is super impactful to be able to hit all those people, whether they're employees or clients that way. There's still power in in-person stuff. That's why events are so powerful still to this day. Everything could be done digitally, and yet live events are more powerful today than ever because we all crave that human connection. But we forget that when we're talking about actual gifts.
So would you recommend, knowing that you would want to do like maybe a pre-experience, you still want to make that a special on stage honoring that person experience? What would that look like to you in order to bring it all together in a way where I've presented this amazing pre-experience and now I've called Al up on stage and we're going to honor him for his contribution? Walk me through how you might stage that.
Well, I think the pre-experience kind of speaks for itself because it's wowing them, it's creating buzz, it's creating energy, it's treating them Al in a different way than he's been before. I think at that point, part of the gift is just being acknowledged and appreciated in front of his peers. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's not the item, it's what words are said and what words are put down on paper. And it's letting those things speak for themselves and letting the gift be something separate. And every time he sees the gift, there's that tangible trigger of him being reminded of the emotions and the experience on the stage. But it's realizing that oftentimes the things that you're giving somebody, they could afford to go buy themselves. So it's the meaning that's attached to it. And I think oftentimes separating those two, they're tied together, but they're the in-person thing, treating them like a human being on the stage, maybe with pictures or videos or the words that are being spoken by somebody that they respect. But it's not feeling obligated to give some piece of glass or plastic or whatever else is like the signifier. I think oftentimes doing something at a different time and in a different way is the way to attach the two. Yeah.
So what's the one question we haven't asked you that you wish we would have when talking about radical generosity?
You're pretty thorough, Lindsay. I'll say, like, we've come at it from a couple different angles. I don't know that there's anything that's not been fully covered. Yeah, I mean, we could talk about it for hours and talk through other principles and whatever else. But in general, I think we've nailed it down pretty well. It's not rocket science. So this is interesting. Like, if you've read the book, The 5 Love Languages, people assume like my love language is gifting. So like, oh, John, you're just born this way. And the ironic thing is like my love language is words of affirmation. And the reason I used gifting early on was I was mimicking somebody else. And when I give a gift as an introvert, it would make somebody have to respond to me as a client or as a prospect. And so I used gifting as kind of like my secret sauce and became really good at it because I was intentional. Instead of playing, fantasy league football, with 4 different teams, I was focusing on how to give cool gifts to inspire people. And so if people think, oh, I could never do this, whether they're event planner, CEO, I call BS. You can do this whether it's for your spouse or whether it's for a client or for an employee. It just takes intentionality. It takes putting your money where your mouth is. It takes being, thoughtful and grateful. Like I try to write down every day 3 people that I'm grateful for and then taking action on those people. And I've been doing that for 19 years. So if you're like, oh, I could never do this, you're just talented, John. I'm like, no, I have people on my team that are way better gift givers than I am. Because they're thoughtful about it and intentional about it, and they understand the system and the kind of the recipe. But this is not exclusive to just one particular person. I think in general, females are better at it because they're emotionally intelligent and way higher at that level, and they understand the little things matter. But anybody on the planet can be really good at this if they're willing to put intentionality behind it.
Yeah, I almost want to bring you back for our Christmas episode just to see what you would bring to the white elephant gift and have it there. Because I feel like it could go one of 2 ways, right? There's probably like the really dramatic gift in which you thought quite a bit about it. And you're like, I can't regift it. But I got this thing that's like hanging back here that drives me crazy, that token.
Yeah, that token, lots of tokens.
Yeah. So the last 2 questions that we always like to end with is if you could only pick one, what's your one tip just for event planners?
Something that I saw my mentor Paul do, and it was something I saw him kind of live by, and it was give more than is reasonable. Most people, but event planners specifically, like we all, like I think we're not appreciated at the level that we should be. I think event planners are definitely in that category. They're kind of take it for granted, and I think we all hold back, worried about being taken advantage of. And I think that when we go all in on relationships and give more than is reasonable, it's amazing the things that happen, whether it's for your event or whether it's for your relationships. I see it. I've seen it. I've lived it for 19 years. And so that's my tip.
All right. Well, you've named a lot of resources today. So we've had your book, The 5 Languages. What are some new and cool resources or just like standbys that you use all the time? What are some resources that you'd like to share with our audience? And we'll be throwing them in from links for the audience at home.
Well, I mentioned Joey Coleman. His book is fantastic called Never Lose a Customer. He's also, I'd put him in the top 10 or 20 speakers I've ever heard. I would put the book Give and Take by Adam Grant is a fantastic book that teaches people how, like, most people are givers, takers, or matchers. I think I put it in my top 10 books that I've read. And other things, I mean, I have a whole list of people that I would recommend from a speaking side. Like John O'Leary is one of the best speakers I've ever heard. And I've had the fortune of sharing the stage and becoming close friends with some guys and gals that are just world-class. He definitely comes to mind, as does Joey. But yeah, off the cuff, those are some of my go-tos. All
right. What about cool technology things? Is there a blog that you read all the time, an app that you use that keeps you organized?
I have three people, humans around me that help keep me organized, because that's I'm not a big app guy. I suffer from shiny object syndrome, so I try to stay away from technology as much as possible, to be perfectly candid. And as far as, what was the other question?
Just events. I mean, just like, what do you do to stay organized and stay together?
Yeah. I mean, I surround myself with great people. Like, that's the biggest thing. Like I said, I struggle with all of those things. So I try to take myself away from the tech platforms as much as, from a blog perspective. I mean, I read Seth Godin's blog every day, and I read Vern Harnish's blog every week. Vern Harnish is a CEO entrepreneur. He's super helpful and engaging. Those are the two that I read most consistently.
Awesome. Well, thank you again so much for bringing all of your insights today. This has been fascinating, and I'm so grateful we got to hear it, and we got to trade Shep Hyken stories. And so I was excited to hear all about that, and that hopefully the hockey team will continue to do good things.
Yeah, he's awesome. Yeah, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention him as a speaker. What a bad friend and mentor. Yeah, he's been amazing. So yeah. Go Blues. Yeah, go Blues, right? For the audience at home, Shep is a customer experience speaker so John lives there in St. Louis. He's been a mentor of John's for a long time. I've known Shep through the National Speakers Association, and Shep really does, sharing stories there. When Shep was the president of the National Speakers Association coming in, he actually gifted the outgoing president with a custom guitar that he had made, and he had it signed by Bruce Springsteen, because Ron was this huge Bruce Springsteen fan. And I mean, it was something where, talk about seeing a grown man in tears on stage. It was just one of those things that you go, yeah, and now I see where, I mean, it's naturally part of Shep's personality, but I can definitely see where some of your principles have definitely come in and become part of what he shares his lifestyle with. So thank you again for sharing all of these things. We'll keep you on so you and I can chat just a little bit afterwards. And for everyone at home, don't forget to follow us online and come in every week and sit down with some of the biggest names and events, have a cup of coffee, and talk about our experiences we're coming up. We've got a big one coming up soon. We're going to be at IMEX Frankfurt, sharing all the experiences from the people who are there around the stands, sharing ideas and things. Plus, we've got great shows that are happening live every week. The best time to watch us is live each Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern at www.eventicons.com. It's available the next following Tuesday on all your favorite podcast apps. If you're following a podcast and we're not there, please just let us know. We want to know what you think. If you've got a topic that you've been burning to know more about, please just drop us a line, and we'll see you then. Thanks so much. Thanks, John.
Thank you for joining us for another amazing episode of #Event Icons. To catch all the bonus content, resources mentioned, and an invite to our Facebook and LinkedIn groups, head to www.event-icons.com. Also, let us know what you thought about this week's episode. Share your biggest takeaway. Just tag your post with #Event Icons. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you again for joining us. We'll see you next Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, right here on #Event Icons.